Alright, then let's get started with web development. So I was on, I think, chapter 12, formatting text. Yeah. Okay, yeah, right. Okay. So EM measurements. An EM is a relative unit of measurement that in traditional typography is based on the width of the capital letter M. Okay, thus the name M. In the CSS specification, an M is calculated as the distance between baseline when the font is set without any extra space between the lines. Okay. Okay, in the CSS specification, an EM is calculated as a distance between baseline when the font is set without any extra space between the lines, also known as leading. Okay, for text with a font size of 16, an EM measures 16 pixels for 12 pixels, okay, and so on. Don't confuse the EM unit of measurement with an EM HTML element used to indicate emphasized text. They are totally different things, right? Okay. Once the dimensions of an EM for a text element is calculated by the browser, it can be used for all sorts of other measurements, such as indents, margins, the width of element on a page, and so on. Okay. When setting font size in EMs, the EM value works like scaling factor similar to a percentage. Okay. In the following example, the body is set to 100%. We assume the default is 16. Setting H1 to 1.5 EM makes it 1.5 times bigger than its inherited size, or 24 pixels. Okay. EM best practices. As of this writing, the most popular solution for marking EM's display consistently is to set the size of the body element to 100%, keeping it at the default or user's preference. Then use EMs to size the text elements thereafter, as we've done in the previous example. This preserves the user's preferred text viewing size, yet ensures text elements are sized proportionally. Okay. So we set the body. Okay. Right. There are a few snags to working with EMs. One is that due to rounding errors, there is some inconsistency among browsers and platforms when text size is set in EMs. Okay. The other tricky aspect to using EMs, the other tricky aspect to using EMs is that they are based on the inherited size of the element, which means that their size is based on the context in which they are applied. If you have many nested elements, the size increase or decrease will compound with each nested level. Okay. Example will make this clearer. So you start with the document's body set to 100 pixels, 16 pixels. But you want the article to be only 14 pixels, dividing the target by context to be 0.875 m. The article font size. Now let's say you want the H2 element in the article to be 18 pixels. This time the M size is not based on the 16 pixel body text, it is based on the article element 14 pixel, because that is the context of H2. Okay, because H2 is the child of article. So we divide the target 18 pixel by 14 pixels to get the final M of 1.2857. That's quite a value. You can round it down, leave at least 4 places after the decimal, but there is no need to. Okay. Ethan Marcotte of Responsive Web Design fame has been hammering the target divided by context is equal to result formula into a head for a few years now. and it comes in handy. Okay. And it comes in handy for building fluid page layouts and other relative sizing tasks. It will certainly come up again in this book. Okay. So pay close attention and write style rules in a way that compensates for this compounding effect. See the introducing root M sidebar for an upcoming approach that sidesteps this problem. Okay. Pixels and absolute measurements. Although some developers prefer pixel font measurements for the precise control they offer, the predominant attitude is that they are too rigid and that relative measurements m and percentage are more appropriate to the medium. As long as we're kicking pixel to the curb, all of the absolute units such as point, pcm are out of because they are irrelevant on screens, although they may be useful for print style sheets. Okay. So this should be yellow and this should be light blue. So another drawback to the pixel font size value is that Internet Explorer all version does not allow text zoom on typed sized pixel. Okay, I don't have that means users are stuck with 10 or 11 pixel type even if they are unable to read it. That's a big no in terms of accessibility. IE7 and higher do allow whole page to be zoomed, which is an improvement, but it is not ideal user experience. Okay, introducing the root M. There is a new relative measurement in CSS called REM for root M that bases font size on the size of the root HTML element. Okay, nice. If we specify the size of the HTML element, presumably 100, all elements that are specified in REM measurements will be relative to that size, not their inherited size. Okay. This gets rid of the compounding issues that make EMS potentially aggravating. Oh, nice. The drawback is that IE8 and earlier other older browsers do not support REM, so you need to fall back. Browser that support REM will use the last declaration in the stack. Okay. The REM unit is gaining popularity in the web development community. For a more thorough introduction, I recommend working with keywords. Right. The remaining way to specify font size, font family, font size. Right. That is all I have covered so far. Type units, we have font size. Then I had font family. Now I only have this font family and font size. Okay. Right. The remaining way to specify font size is one of the predefined absolute keywords extra small, okay, extra small, small, medium, large, extra large, extra large. The keywords do not correspond to particular measurements but rather are scaled consistently in relation to one another. The default size is medium in current browsers. Shows how each absolute 12.5. This is an example of default text. This is times. Okay. To another absolute keyword renders in a browser. Okay. I've included sample in Verdana in times to show that even with the same base size, there is a big difference in legibility at sizes small and below. Right. Okay. The benefit of keywords is that current browsers won't let text sized in keywords render smaller than 9 pixels. So they protect against illegible types. Okay. On the downside, keywords are imprecise and unpredictable. For example, while most users scale each level up by 120, some browsers use a scale factor of 150. Right. The relative keywords larger and smaller are used to shift the size of the text relative to the size of the parent element. The exact amount of the size is determined by each browser is out of our control. Okay. Despite the limitation, it is an easy way to nudge type a bit larger or smaller if the exact proportions are not critical. Okay, now we have setting font size. Okay, so we start. Let's define the size of some of the text elements to give the online menu a more sophisticated appearance. Open menu.html in a text editor and follow the steps below. You can save the document at any point and take a peek in the browser to see the result of your work. You should also feel free to try out other size values along the way. Okay, let's copy this and let's open it up. HTML, we go provide a language. Yeah. Okay. Then there are many approaches to sizing text on web pages. In this example, I'll stick with the preferred method of the best web developers I know, which is to start by putting a stake in the ground and setting body element to 100%, thus clearing the way of measurements thereafter. Okay, so we have body. Okay, maybe go font size is 100%. Right, font size is 100. Provide a font size. I'd like the main text elements to be 14 pixels instead of the default 16 pixels. If it's too small for my visitors, they can zoom in larger. I'll add a new rule with a grouped selector to select the P and DL data list. It was not. Yeah, DL dictionary list. Yeah, data term and data definition. Okay, then let's put P comma DL with a font size of 0.875 em. Okay, right. I'm using formula. So I could have used 87.5% to achieve the same thing. Sorry. So now let's get the size of the heading under control. I'd like the main heading H1. Okay, let me see what changes. 100%, and they are smaller. Okay, so the body is at 100%, and these are. Have I provided H1? No, I have not provided it a size. Font size. And okay, let me take a look at this is the size. Then if I remove this, then they are larger. Yeah, right. Okay. Group selector. Okay. Then now let's get the size of the headings under control. I'd like the main heading H1 to be 1.5 times bigger than the body text, and H2 can be default size of 1 em. Okay, so H1 will add a font size of 1.5 em, and H2 can have a font size of 1 em default. Right. So we have this now. Font weight, boldness. Okay. After font families and size, the remaining font properties are straightforward. For example, if you want text element to appear in bold, use the font weight property to adjust the boldness of the type. Okay, font weight, it inherits. Okay. About inherit, you will see that CSS properties include inherit in their list of keyword values. Okay. The inherit value allows you to explicitly force an element to inherit. Okay. Okay. Exploiting style property value from its parent. This may come in handy to override other styles applied to that element and to guarantee that the element always matches its parent. Nice. Okay. We have, as you can see, font weight. Okay, normal, bold, bolder, lighter, or we can give values. As you can see, the font weight property has many predefined values, including descriptive terms normal, bold, bolder, lighter, and 9 numeric values 100 to 9 okay, for targeting various weights of a font if they are available. Okay. Because most fonts commonly used on the web have only two weights, normal or Roman and bold. Okay, we have normal and bold. Value you will use in most cases. Okay, the value you will use in most cases is bold. You may also use normal to make text that would otherwise appear in bold, such as strong text or headline, appear at normal weight. Okay, so this is 600, 700, 900. Bold, bolder. Okay. The numeric chart is an interesting idea, but because there aren't many fonts with that range of weights, and because browser support is spotty, they are not often used. In general, numeric setting 600 and higher result in bold text, although even that can vary in browser. Okay, so making text bold, we have okay, we open this. Then we go making, okay, go back to menu. I've decided that I'd like all of the menu items name to be in bold text. What I'm going to do is wrap each one in B tag menu items. That would be so 1996. I'm also not going to mark them in strong elements. That is not semantically accurate. Instead, at the right, okay, DT definition term and font weight. Right, here we go. DT font weight bold. Through the style. Okay, so right now, let me just put it up. See, these are not in, what do we say, bold, so we are going to make them bold with DT and font weight equals bold, and that is all it needs. So let's reload it, and there we go. Okay. Font style italics. The font style property affects the posture of the text, that is, whenever the letter shapes are vertical, normal, or slanted, italic, and oblique. Okay. Italic and oblique are both slanted version of the font. The difference is that italic version is usually a separate typeface design with curved letter forms, whereas oblique makes text the normal font design and just slants it. Okay. The truth is that in most browsers, they may look exactly the same. Okay. Oblique tab. You'll probably only use the font style property, makes italic, or make text italicized in the normal stuff. Display as normal. Right. Okay. So making text italic. So we will close, we also close this, we go here. What do we want to make it Alex? Okay, we want these new item. Okay, new item. Maybe it is a span element. It is new item. Okay, strong. I want to make all strong italics. So we'll go strong font style italic, right? Now that all menu items are bold, some of I've marked as strong isn't standing out so well. So I think I'll make them italic. So further emphasis. Right. Load. Let's try and see that these are now italic. Even very spicy. Where is very spicy? I can. There it is. Okay. Then font variant. Some typefaces come in small caps variant. This is a separate font design that uses small uppercase letters in place of lowercase letter designs. The one trick pony font variant property is intended to allow designers to specify such small caps font or text elements. Okay. In most cases, a true small caps font is not available. So browsers simulate small caps by scaling down uppercase letters in the current font. To typography sticklers, this is less than ideal and results in inconsistent stroke weights, but you may find it acceptable option for adding variety to small amounts of text. Okay. The shortcut font property. Specifying multiple font properties for each text element can get repetitive and lengthy. Okay. So the creators of CSS provided the shorthand font property that compiles all of the font related properties into one rule. Okay, values we style. You give the style first, then weight, then variant, then font size, line or height. Okay, weight was okay, style, font style. I don't remember. Italic. Okay, so we provide first, then we provide the weight, like bold, italics, and all. Then size, then font. Okay. The value of the font property is a list of values for all the font properties we just looked, separated by character spaces. In this property, the order of the values is important. Okay, so this is an important line. Okay, at minimum, the font property must include a font size value and a font family. Okay, EM sans serif. In that order. Omitting one or putting them in wrong order causes entire rule to be invalid. Okay. Once we've met the size and family requirements, the other values are optional and may appear in any order prior to the font size. Okay. When style, weight or variant are omitted, they revert back to normal. There is one value in there, line height, that we have not seen before. As it sounds, it adjusts the height of the text line and is used to add space between lines or text. It appears just after font size, separated by a slash. Slash, okay. As shown in these examples. Okay. Okay, let's use the shorthand font property to make some changes to H2 headings. Okay, so we get bold. Okay, so we provide the weight. This is the weight. Then we provide the font size. Then we provide the font family. Right. Yeah. We'll last tweak to the menu. Then we'll take a brief break. To save space, we can combine all of the font properties we specified for the H1 element in one declaration with the shorthand font. Okay. So we'll close this. We'll close this. And I want to make font here, font size and font family. Okay, so I will go with a single font, right? We provide the weight, bold, then we provide the size, which is 1.5 em. Then we provide all of the Georgia, was it? Georgia and serif. You might find it redundant that I included bold font weight value in this rule. After all, H1 element was already bold by default, right? The thing about shorthand properties is that if you omit a value, it is reset to the default value within the property, not the browser's default. Okay. H1 black. Right. The thing about this default value. The thing about shorthand properties is that if you omit a value, it is reset to the default value within that property. Okay. Not the browser's default value. In this case, the default font weight value within a font declaration is normal. Because the style sheet rule we've written overrides the browser's default bold heading rendering, the H1 would appear in normal weight text if we don't explicitly make it bold in the font property. Shorthand properties can be tricky that way. Pay attention that you don't leave something out and override a default or inherited value you were counting on. Okay, so let me just try this. Okay, so this is like that, and if I don't include the bold, right, what happens then? Nothing. Marco 1 H1. Okay, if I just don't include this, right, what happens then? It is right 0.5. Why did Marco 1 disappear? I don't Marco 1. Okay, comma. I didn't provide the commas, right? Okay, these are comma separated. My bad. Okay. So we have, this is not bold right now. We provide bold, and then we have bold, right? Okay. You can save this and look at the browser if you done your job right. It should look exactly the same in the previous step. Okay. Changing the text color. We've got a glimpse of how to change text color in chapter 11. And to be honest, there's not a lot, right? Color red and all. Okay. There's not a lot more to say about it here. You can change the color of text with color properties. Color values. Yeah. Okay. Color names. CSS 2.1 defines 17 standard color names, black these days. The updated CSS 3 module allows names from a larger set of 140 color names to be specified in style sheet. Okay. Using the color property is very straightforward. The value of the color property can be a predefined color name, see the color name sidebar, or a numeric value describing the specific RGB color. Here are a few examples: color gray, color this, color this, color this. Okay, RGB. Don't worry about the numeric values for now. I just want you to see what they look like. RGB color is discussed in chapter 13 details. Okay, so we'll just stick with color names for demonstration purposes. Color is inherited, so you can change the color of all text in a document by applying color property to the body element. Okay, so you probably wouldn't want all your text to be fuchsia, but you get the idea. For the sake of accuracy, I want to point out that color property is not strictly a text related property. Okay, in fact, according to CSS specification, it is used to change the foreground as opposed to the background color of an element. Okay, the foreground of an element consists of both text it contains as well as its borders. Okay. When you apply a color to an element, including image element, that color will be used for the border as well, unless there is a specific border color property that overrides it. Right. Okay. Before we add color to the online menu, I want to take a little side trip and introduce you to a few more type of selectors that will give us more flexibility in targeting elements in the document for styling. Okay. A few more selector types. So far we've been using elements. Okay. So far we've been using element names as selectors. In the last chapter, you saw how selectors can be grouped together in a comma separated list, so you can apply properties to several elements at once. Here are examples: okay, element selector and grouped selector. The disadvantage of selecting element in this way, of course, is that property, in this case navy blue text, will apply to every paragraph and other listed element in the document. Sometimes you want to apply a rule to a particular paragraph or paragraphs. In this section, we'll look 3 types of selectors that allow us just to do that: descendant selector, ID selector, and class selector. Okay. Descendant selector. A descendant selector targets elements that are contained within and therefore are descendants of another element. It is an example of a contextual selector because it selects the element based on its context or relation to another element. Descendant selectors are indicated in a list separated by character space. This example targets emphasized element but only when they appear in a list item. Emphasized text in target and that would be unaffected. Okay, this element is contained within this. The second element must be contained within the first. Here's another example that shows how contextual selectors can be grouped in a comma separated list, just as we saw earlier. This rule targets EM elements but only when they appear in H1, H2 and H3 headings. Nice. Then it is also possible to nest descendant selectors deeply. Example, okay, unordered list, href and em. Okay, other contextual selectors. Descendant selectors are one of four types of contextual selectors called combinators in the CSS3 specification. The other three are child selector, adjacent sibling selector, and general sibling selector. Okay, child selector. A child selector is similar to a descendant selector, but it targets only the direct children of a given name. Given children. Selector similar to, but it targets only the direct children of a given name. There may be no other hierarchical levels in between. They are indicated with a greater than sign. The following rule affects emphasized text but only when it is directly contained in a P element. An EM element inside a link within a paragraph would not be affected. Okay. Adjacency selector. An adjacency sibling selector targets an element that comes directly after another element with the same parent. It is indicated with a plus sign. This rule gives special treatments to paragraphs that follows each one. Okay. Other paragraphs are unaffected. General sibling selector, new in CSS3. A general sibling selector selects an element that shares a parent with the specified element. General sibling selector selects an element that shares a parent with the specified element and occurs after it in the source order. Okay, a general sibling selector selects an element that shares a parent with the specified element and occurs after it in the source order. They do not need to follow one another directly. This type of selector is new and is not supported by directly. The following rule selects H2 that both share the parent section within H1 and appears after it in the document. Okay. Then we have, what is the time? Okay. Then we have ID selectors. Way back in chapter 5, marking up text, we learned about ID attribute that gives an element a unique identifying name, its ID reference. The ID attribute can be used with any HTML element, and it is commonly used to give meaning to generic div and span. The hash symbol identifies the ID. Okay. The ID selector allows you to target element by their ID values. Right. The symbol that identifies ID selectors is the octothrop, also known as the hash symbol. Here's an example. This ID is this. Now you can write a style rule just for that list item using ID selector, like so. Okay, because ID values must be unique in the document, it is acceptable to omit the element name. The following rule is equivalent to the last one. Okay. You can also use ID selectors as part of contextual selectors. Okay. In this example, a style is applied only to li elements that appear within the element marked as links. In this way, you can treat list items in the element named links differently than all other list items on the page without any additional markup. Right. You should be beginning to see the power of selectors and how they can be used strategically with well-planned semantics. Reminder: the value for ID attribute must start with the letter A to Z. In addition to letters, the name may contain digits, hyphen, underscore, periods. Note that colon and period are best avoided. As they may be confused with CSS style syntax. Yeah, right. Then we have class selectors. One last selector type, and then we can get back to the text style properties. The other element identifier you learned about chapter 5 is the class identifier used to classify elements into a conceptual group. Unlike the ID attribute, Multiple elements may share a class name. Not only that, but an element may belong to more than one class. You can target elements belonging to the same class with, you guessed it, a class selector. Class names are indicated with a period at the beginning of the selector. For example, to select all paragraphs with class special, use a selector like this, p dot special. To apply, the period symbol indicates a class selector. To apply property to all elements of the same class, omit the element name in the selector. This would target all paragraphs and any other element that has been marked up with a class special. Okay. The universal selector. CSS2 introduced a universal selector element that matches any element, like a wildcard in programming language style rule. Makes the foreground of every element in the document gray. It is also useful as contextual selector. Okay. Array. It is also useful. The universal selector causes problems with form controls in some browser if a page contains form inputs or sufficient space to avoid. Okay. Example that selects all elements in an intro section. Okay, specificity 101. In chapter 11, I introduced you to the term specificity, which refers to the fact that more specific selectors have more weight when it comes to handling style rule conflicts. Right. Now that you know a few more selectors, it is a good time to revisit this very important concept. Okay, the actual system CSS uses for calculating selectors is quite complicated, but this list of separators from most to least specific should serve from most to least. Okay, will override and will override specific. ID selectors are more specific than class and right class selectors. Okay, so ID. For example, strong color red and H1 strong color red. So for example, if H1 contextual selector is more specific and has more weight. Alright. Okay, you can use specificity strategically to keep your style sheets simple. Okay, I think I'll go 2 minutes more. You can use specificity strategically to keep your style sheets simple and your markup minimal. For example, it is possible to set a style for an element P in this example and then override when necessary by using more specific selector. Okay, ID. Okay, so this is a contextual, this is class. This is example P element that appears in the block code has smaller line height than ordinary. However, all paragraphs with the class of intro will have 2m height even if it appears within a block quote, because class selectors are more specific than contextual selectors. Okay. Do we have more specificity? We have understanding the concepts of inheritance and specificity are critical to mastering CSS, and there is a lot more to be said about specificity. Okay, more about specificity. The specificity overview in this chapter. The specificity overview in this chapter is enough to get you started, but when you get more experienced and your style sheet becomes more complicated, you may find that you need a more thorough understanding of inner workings. For the technical explanation of how specificity is calculated, is the same. Okay, I will check that out sometime. Eric Meyer provides a thorough yet more digestible description of the in this book. Thus, if you are looking for help online, I recommend Splashing Magazine article. Yeah. Understanding the concepts of inheritance and specificity are critical to mastering CSS. Okay. Now back to the menu. Fortunately, our Black Quiz Bistro page has been marked up thoroughly and semantically, so we have a lot of options for selecting specific elements. Give these new selectors a try and okay, so we'll continue this some other time. Right now.